Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. This is lesson number 56 from the explanation of Bulugh Maram. And inshallah, we're going to continue today with the manners of going to the restroom. So the next hadith, inshallah, is in regards to staying out of the view of people. Because obviously, whenever we are going to expose any part of our body that's from the awrah, we have to do that far from the gaze of the people, because it's not permissible to expose this part of the body to the people. So this is what this hadith is going to be dealing with, and inshallah we're going to try to take that hadith and the hadith after that of Abi Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu, which deals with whenever a person is outside and he's in a position where there's no restrooms, there's no place to go to the bathroom, so he has to go to the bathroom outside. How does he go about doing that, and where does he do it? I mean, here it's not focusing on the manner, but the where does he do it? So inshallah, the first hadith, وعن المغيرة ابن شعبة رضي الله عنه قال لي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم خذ العداوة فانطلق حتى توارى عني فقضى حاجته متفق عليه. So this hadith is reported on the authority of Al-Mughirah ibn Shu'bah radiyallahu anhu, in which he said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, خُذَ الْعِدَاوَةِ. And as we spoke about in the last lesson, the idawa, because it came in the previous hadith also, that the idawa is it's a small water skin that's used for this purpose. It could be used for drinking water, or it could be used for the purpose of going to the restroom, because this is it's a smaller water skin, so obviously this is something that you'll be actually carrying with you. It's not like the bigger water skin that you would keep in the house, but this is an idawa. So this could go to like a bottle of water or any so it's not necessary that obviously it's not, the hukum is not specific for just a water skin, but any type of vessel that a person carries water around in. So he said khud al-idawa, so take the small water skin, فانطلق حتى توارى عني. Tawara, it has the meaning of al-ikhfa, which means to hide something. So that's tawara, and warahu it means akhfahu. And this even goes to even a person who's buried, because obviously when you put a person in the ground, called akhfaytahu. And this came in even that meaning from a poem from Imr al-Qais, which he said, أجارتنا إن الخطوبة تنوب وإني مقيم ما أقام عصيب أجارتنا أن غريبان ها هنا وكل غريب للغريب نسيب فإن تصلينا فالقرابة بيننا وإن تصرمينا فالغريب غريب أجارتنا ما فات ليس يؤوب وما هو آت في الزمان قريب وليس غريبا من تناءت دياره ولكن من وراء التراب غريب. So in this poem he's talking about traveling. And basically the person who goes out and he becomes like a traveler in another land, how he's a gharib. So even in the last part we said, whatever has passed you by in this life, la ya'ubu, is never returned to you. وَمَا هُوَ آتٍ فِي الزَّمَانِ قَرِيبٌ, and what's coming in the future is close. Now of course this is dealing with death. It's not dealing with he's not talking about money or anything, but he said, وَمَا هُوَ آتٍ فِي الزَّمَانِ قَرِيبٌ, the death is close to you. وَلَيْسَ غَرِيبًا مَنْ تَنَاءَتْ دِيَارُهُ. He's saying that a person is not a gharib. The real gharib is not the person who's become far from his diyar, from his house, from his balad. He said, وَلَكِنْ مَنْ وَارَى تُرَابُ غَرِيبُ. He said, the person that has been covered by dirt, has been hidden by dirt, he's the gharib. And he's talking about, of course, the person who is dead. So here he used the word wara turabu gharibu, and he's talking about the person who's been buried in the ground. So any of the types of meanings of al-ikhfa, this is where you get the word tawara. So here we look at this and we say, okay, فَانْطَلَقَ حَتَّى تَوَارَ عَنِّي. Tawara, so he went out and he chose a spot to be hidden away from Al-Mughirah ibn Shu'bah, because he was there and he didn't want, of course, to stay away from any possibility of people seeing him while he did what he had to do. فَقَضَى حَاجَتُهُ. And in this state, once he was hidden away from the people, that's when he relieved himself. He did what he had to do. He relieved himself, and then he came back. So the whole point is that this is something that's an obligation upon a Muslim, because it's not permissible for anybody to show any part of their awrah to for a man, for example, to show any part of his aura to anybody except for his wife. All right. And the same thing with the wife to her husband. It's not, it's not permissible even for her own family, and it's not permissible for him for his own family. So even amongst family members, you have to make sure that when you're in the bathroom or you're in any place that if you're changing your clothes or any time that you are going to be exposing these parts of your bodies, whether it's, like I said, whether it's relieving yourself or even changing your clothes or taking a shower, you have to. It's an obligation upon everybody to make sure before you take your clothes off that there's no possibility of anybody seeing you. So if you're in the bathroom, you make sure that the door is locked, make sure that the curtains are closed, make sure that there's no possibility that somebody could see you. So this is an obligation upon us to stay out of the sight of people whenever we're exposing these parts of our bodies, whether in relieving ourselves or whatever out of the other things that were mentioned. And we can also take from the hadith something that, like, for example, when a person is traveling or he's going to go to a place, especially like us in the West, because we have the issue that, like when you're living in a Muslim country, anywhere that you go where there's a bathroom, you have a place that you can do istinja. You have a place with a hose and water that you can do istinja, generally, in the majority of the Muslim countries, the vast majority of the Muslim countries. But however, when you're living in the West, if you're out with your family, wherever you're at, whether you go to a park or any place like this, you're not going to find these, any place. All you're going to have is toilet paper. You might not even have that. So a person knowing that obviously he's going to have to wash himself, or even the family, they're going to need that water. So you see here that they had the water prepared while they were out for this purpose, and then a person should always be prepared also for that purpose. So if you are out with the family, to keep like at least a bottle with you, so if anybody does need to go to the bathroom, you can fill the bottle up, and then you have something that you can do istinja with. I mean, obviously we spoke about this previously, that about using the toilet paper. Does the toilet paper count as a form of istinja? And it does, as long as you continue, as long as you wipe until the toilet paper is completely clean, then you have gotten rid of the ayn najasa. So it does actually fulfill the function of istinja. However, when we talk about the afdaliyah, which is better, it's definitely better to wash and to clean, because the water actually cleans all the residue, the majority of the residue. I mean, obviously, if a person eats a lot of oils and things like that, there might still be residue even after that, but the water will get the vast majority of those residue, out of the area, so which is najasa. So, and you want to get as clean as possible. You want to get as much as of any type of najasa that you can off your body, and obviously water is the best way. So it's better to have that prepared with you. At least have a bottle with you whenever you go out, as you see that the Prophet ﷺ, they had the idawa min mat. So this also shows the permissibility of using water, as we spoke about previously. All right, and on the next hadith, which I said, inshallah, we'll try to take these two. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اتقوا اللاعنين الذي يتخلى في طريق الناس وفي ظلهم أو في ظلهم عفوا رواه مسلم. So this hadith is reported on the authority of Abu Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu قال رسول الله صلى which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, اتقوا اللاعنين. And generally, whenever you see this type of wording with taqwa, like جاءنا in a hadith like اتقوا الدنيا واتقوا النساء فإن أول فتنة بني إسرائيل كان في النساء, like a hadith like this where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says اتقوا الدنيا, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, اتقوا الدنيا واتقوا النساء. So what this means is that you're not having this type of fear, because obviously taqwa is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So our taqwa, we're obeying the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and staying away from His prohibitions. So whenever you see stuff, this type of wording, right, ittaqu dunya, it means ittaqu Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi tasarrufatik fi dunya. Have that taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in how you deal with the dunya and all your affairs in the dunya, that you're obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your affairs with the dunya, and that you're also staying away from His prohibitions. Wattaqun nisa'. Also, have a taqwa with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your dealings with the nisa, with the women, and how you deal with them, that you give them their rights, and you don't oppress them, and you don't, and you give them, you feed them and clothe them, and all the rights that they have over you, that you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you basically carry out the things that your obligations as a Muslim, in these regards. So here it says ittaqul la'inain. So it's that you're not going to have taqwa with the la'inain. The la'inain, it means two things that cause a person to become mal'un, to become a cursed. And of course, the curse, the Latin, is ibad and rahmatillah. So it means that you're actually making dua that a person become far, far away from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the two things that cause a person to become mal'un, because when this happens, these are generally things that the person would, make dua for, la'na for a person if he did these things. So he's saying, like, so the Prophet ﷺ is saying, so, ittaqullah subhanahu wa ta'ala fi ijtinab hadaini al-la'inain. So this is a part of taqwa, that we stay away from these two things. He said, alladhi yatakhalla fi tariq an-nas. Takhalla here, when we're dealing with relieving oneself, it's taken from the word, it's al-makan al-khali. Al-khali, it means that there's no people. Because obviously, whenever you're going to relieve yourself, you're going to choose a place that's khali. So, khali and nas. So you take al-makan al-khali, because this is the habitual practices of the people, obviously, is that they would relieve themselves in a place where people wouldn't frequent. We're talking about outside, obviously. We're not talking about in the restrooms. And this is also where we get the word al-khulwa. Al-khulwa, it means to be alone, to be away from people. So the actual meaning here, it goes back to a person relieving himself, but relieving himself away from the eyes of the people and away from the people. So yatakhalla fi tariq an-nas. The tariq an-nas is the path that the people use to travel on, or to walk on, or to whatever the case is. So this is not permissible for a person to go into the pathway of the people and relieve himself. He should avoid any path, because the people, they can walk through there, they step on it, and then also the smells, and there's so many harms that come from this type of action. And then on top of that, just the filth and the bacteria and all this type of, the sickness that can, Allah musta'an, it's just nasty. So the person should avoid, any path that the people travel on. And he said, aw fi dhillihim, or the place that they seek shade. Because obviously these places, especially when you're traveling, back in the old days, because they used to travel by camel, so anybody that's been out in the desert, they know there's not many places where you're going to be able to find shade underneath a tree. So for a person to go and use that spot to relieve himself, so now the people who try to seek shade under that tree now would be harmed by the smell, or maybe they don't not paying attention and they sit in that, or so these types of things, to avoid the places where people are going to frequent, or where people are going to rest at. And of course, this hadith is an evidence of the actual action being impermissible. So it's not permissible for a person to use these areas where the people are going to frequent, and where they're going to either frequent where they're traveling and traversing the land, or two, where they're going to seek shade and rest. You shouldn't, it's not permissible for a person to go and relieve himself in these two areas. After that, of course, this hadith is narrated in Sahih Muslim, and Hafiz ibn Hajar, he mentioned different ziyadat from different books from the Sunan. He said, Zada Abu Dawood an Mu'adh wal Mawarid. The Mawarid is where the people go to take their animals to get water. So he's saying that a person should not should not relieve himself in these areas. We'll get back to these ziyadat, to these extra wordings in a second, inshallah. He said, Wali Ahmed and Ibn Abbas al Naqar Ma'. And this is a place where the water is, where it comes, like where it all, like, because you have different, like the water that flows, and this is the place where it's like, where it all comes, like ijtima', yijtama', where it comes together, where all the water flows together. He said, وَنَقَعِ الْمَاءِ. He said, وَفِيهِمَا ضَعْفٌ وَأَخْرَجَ طَبَرَانِيُّ النَّهْيَ عَنْ قَضَاءِ الْحَاجَةِ تَحْتَ الْأَشْجَارِ الْمُثْمِرَةِ. He said this is Tabarani, he mentions that it's not permissible to relieve yourself underneath a tree that has this bearing fruit. وَضَفَّةَ النَّهَرِ الْجَارِ. And this the ضَفَّةَ النَّهَر is the like the shore, like the place right where the water meets the land. Because at this place, anybody who has any type of things that they have to do, some people, they go there maybe to wash clothes or to bathe or whatever the case may be, and obviously it's not a place where a person should relieve themselves. من حديث ابن عمر بسنده ضعف, and all of these extra the ziyadat that Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar mentioned, all of them have some form of ضعف in them. So Sheikh Abdullah Ali Bassam, he mentioned in his book توضيح الأحكام, he mentioned for the first one, he said فسبب ضعف زيادة أحمد وجود ابن لهيعة في سنده وهو سيء الحفظ. So the first one, which is the extra wording in Musnad of Imam Ahmed, it has a person, his name is Ibn Luhayya, and he is known for having a bad memory. So of course, Sayyi al-Hifd is a person, if a person is known for having a bad memory where they're constantly making mistakes, constantly. Now of course, we're humans, we're going to make mistakes. So if a person makes a mistake here and a mistake there, this is not going to render his hadith or his narration invalid. But when a person becomes known for that, constantly making these mistakes, then at that point, then they will not accept this hadith. So he said, وَسَبَبُ ضَعْفِ زِيَادَةِ أَبِي دَاوُودَ الْإِنْقِطَاعِ. So he said that the next reason for the extra wording in the narration in Sunan Abi Dawood is an inqita', which means that there's a person missing. There's cut off, like the sanad is cut. لأنه من رواية أبي سعيد الحميري عن معاذ وهو لم يدرك معاذا فيكون منقطعا. So the issue is that Abu Sa'id al-Himyari, he narrated an Mu'adh, but he never sat with Mu'adh. He is not known for ever taking any hadith from Mu'adh. So for that reason, it's munqati', his cut. The sanad is cut because this person, Abu Sa'id al-Himyari, he would have to narrate from somebody else that sat with Mu'adh. But he can't narrate from Mu'adh directly because he never sat with him. He said, وَأَمَّا السَّبَبُ ضَعْفَ زِيَادَةَ الطَّبَرَانِي فَإِنَّ فِي سَنَدِهِ فرات ibn Sa'ib وَهُوَ مَتْرُوك. So the last one, which is the extra wording in Tabarani, he said that there's a person in the Sanad, his name is Furat ibn Sa'ib وَهُوَ مَتْرُوك. He's basically matruk. It means that the people left off accepting his narration for whatever reason. Could have been because of a person becomes matruk for different reasons, either because he's a sinful person, maybe he's continuously doing, maybe he's fallen into like different actions that are considered from the kaba'ir, or he's like musir ala saghair and he's not making tawbah, or the person is also it could be because he has a bad memory, or he's not known for, so he might not even be known for talib al-ilm, or whatever the case may be, whatever he becomes matruk for, but he's matruk, it means that they left off accepting his narration. So for a person to know exactly the reason why, you have to go back to the books, the Kutub al-Rijal, inshallah. So inshallah, the main thing from these two hadithani, is that we understand that number one, that the person, whenever he's going to relieve himself, he should go to a place that is far away from the people. It doesn't have to be far, but it has to be where you are not to be seen from the people, not at least that your awrah will not be exposed where anybody could see it, and that you always, if you are out and traveling or going around outside, that you prepare something, a water bottle or something that you can use for istinja. And if you are out and you have to relieve yourself outside in the open, not in the open, obviously you still cover yourself, but that you don't do this on the pathways that the people travel on, and you don't do this underneath the trees. And this goes for trails. Like if you're out in the woods, you would go into the bushes and do what you have to do. Be careful of snakes, obviously, but you would not do it on the actual trail itself, because this is where the people are walking, and this is not permissible. وَإِلَهُنَا سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ أَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ.